Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
James, thanks for joining me. I wanted to have you on the show because I think the work that the Justice Center is doing right now, especially during the pandemic, but always, is so important in defense of civil liberties. And I know there are a lot of organizations in this country who purport to be about civil liberties. And you hear a lot about them when they would like you to renew your membership in their organization, journalistic organizations. I'm looking at you. But the Justice Center, you folks really put your money where your mouth is. And I think you've played a strategic role in keeping this country a little more free, especially during the pandemic. And the one that I want to talk about first is the legal action that the Justice Center has taken with regard to the Alberta government lockdown. You are challenging the lockdowns in court.
That's right, we are, the whole thing. But what people might not fully understand is that we're also seeking an injunction. So, normally court processes take years. We try to maybe cut that down to maybe half or 3/4 of a year because we go through what's called an application as opposed to a statement of claim. It speeds it up a little bit. There's no big trial where we get 1 or 2 days in court. But even then, of course, in a situation like this, 4, 6, 8 months is a long time. A lot of people aren't going to make it that long, right? So in addition to that, what we've done is we've applied for an injunction, which is an emergency expedited hearing, right? And of course, emergency and expedited in the legal world means 2 weeks. So we filed the whole thing, both the originating application, it's called, and the injunction application early on here in December with the goal of getting an injunction hearing before the court closed for Christmas, which we've succeeded in doing. And I can tell you that we originally had a hearing scheduled for this Thursday, December 17th. That has now been moved to Monday, December, 21st, I believe, is the Monday, this coming Monday at 9:30 a.m. The public and media can attend that. It'll be a virtual hearing. So, the people who aren't lawyers have to fill out a quick little form. Other than that, they can attend. So my understanding is that hundreds of people can virtually attend this hearing as long as they, sign and act in accordance with this agreement to not disrupt the proceedings. And I encourage people to do that. And my understanding from the court is that we are going to get a decision almost immediately after that hearing. So if we are successful, that will mean that the Christmas is uncanceled, and that's one of the goals of this. Obviously, we're trying to get people's businesses open. We're trying to get people able to earn an income, obviously, and that's urgent because people need to be able to do that for the next few months if they're going to survive until we can have a full hearing on the merits on this. But we're also trying to get the outdoor gathering restrictions lifted so people can continue to protest this lawfully for the next few months, which they have a constitutional right to do. And probably most importantly for most people, the restriction that prevents them from lawfully celebrating Christmas together in their own homes, we are trying to get that lifted. And if we're successful, then that means, as of a day or two after the hearing, prior to Christmas, people will be able to lawfully gather for Christmas again, which they always should have been able to.
So if people are able, I'm probably gonna, but if people are lawfully allowed to celebrate Christmas with their extended families over Christmas, it will be because of the work done by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Is there, or are there any other civil liberties organizations joining with you in this challenge?
Not so far, certainly not for the injunction. It'll be interesting to see if any join on to the main action. That's a good question. I mulled this over in my mind the other day, and I listed off all the ones that are unlikely to join. I can only think of one, I suppose, other than the Rebel, perhaps. I can only think of one that would even consider doing this, and I won't name them, but I'll leave that to you. But this goes a lot farther than the so-called civil liberties organizations would be willing to go, right? Ultimately, what we're seeking is for all of the orders that infringe civil liberties, and the vast majority of them do, and I'm sure there's a few provisions that don't. We're asking for them all to be struck down. Because there just isn't the evidence to justify the infringements, right? It's not that nothing is going on. We have something, obviously, we know that, But in order to justify these sorts of egregious wholesale infringements, you have to have something dramatic to support that justification, and that's missing. That's not there, right? The sky is not falling. People aren't dying in the streets, right? We have a situation we got to deal with, but do we deal with that through normal measures, or do we deal with that, through the complete destruction of the economy and of people's liberties, and really of the whole thing that makes life worth the living? I mean, Christmas is massive for people, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. Christmas morning is, that's some of the things that keep people going as far as their mental health. That's what people live for, right? You live for those types of events. That's what makes life worth living for. That's what makes us different than cattle that you can just, put in a pen, right? We are emotional beings. We need social interaction. We live for it. And I've heard from doctors who talked about their patients are willing to risk, their older patients are willing to risk getting COVID and dying if that's what it means in order for them to have that social interaction that they want more than anything else, right? So that's what this is about. It's about not just the rights, but what the rights protect. The rights protect these real, human, important things that we take for granted, but we do because that's what makes life worth living. It's about getting those back, because you don't justify infringing that just by saying, yeah, the ICUs are quite full, and yes, I get it. Some people have died of this respiratory. I understand that, right? And that's serious, and we got to deal with it. But do we deal with it by actually making things worse, by destroying the economy and the opioid overdoses and the canceled surgeries? As everybody knows about that. Are we making things better? Or no, we're making them worse, right? And the Constitution is designed to protect against that.
That's an excerpt from my weekly Wednesday night show, The Gunn Show. Now, normally the full show is sitting behind a paywall, but we thought you'd like this clip. Now, on my show, I talk to interesting newsmakers, thinkers, and doers that are normally ignored, maligned, or completely attacked by the mainstream media. If you'd like to get access to my show, as well as other great TV-style shows too, like Ezra's Nightly, Ezra Levant Show, and David Menzies' Friday night show, Rebel Roundup, just go to rebelnews.com/subscribe. That's rebelnews.com/subscribe.